And he was there to go pick up my kids when I couldn't. And he did it with humility, and he did it with love.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' run to become the Republican candidate for president is not going very well. So now, during his media appearances, which now includes NBC News of all places, he is trying to appear more likable, more personable, more like your everyman. Yet, in doing so, he is coming off even worse. So I'm going to show you this clip from this recent interview from a few days ago with NBC News. And to me, two things really stand out here. Check this out.
I've never told my kids about the cancer battle because they don't think that they're old enough to really understand what that means. And so at some point we will tell them. But you asked the question about what kind of a dad he is. When you're going through opportunities where you can barely scrape yourself off the bathroom floor because you're sick and your children are calling for you and you physically cannot get to them, but you have somebody who was not only running the state of Florida and was there for the people of his state, he was there for me. And he was there to go pick up my kids when I couldn't. And he did it with humility, and he did it with love. And I'll tell you what, can't ask for a better husband than that.
Yeah,
How does it feel? How does it feel to hear her say that? I mean,
well, look, that's, in sickness and in health, that's what you sign up for. I mean.
All right. Now, I'm going to guess a lot of you maybe didn't get much from that. But there are two things, and the second one I think is going to be clearly the most important point, that come out of this for me. And it really helps to expose just how inauthentic Ron DeSantis is. So his wife has gone through cancer treatments. Terrible experience, of course. And she's here talking about her experience, of how great of a husband and a father Ron DeSantis is. Just, this may seem petty, but the best thing you can mention about him during this whole experience is that he picked up your children and did it with humility. Look, maybe she's just, in the moment, can't think of a better example. Maybe it's meant to be a metaphor. Metaphorically, you picked us up as a family. Though it's not how it came off, but I don't know. I would hope you'd have a better anecdote than that. Apart from that, though, let's put that aside. This is what really stands out for me. Ron DeSantis, his record on healthcare is absolutely terrible and arguably the worst out of any governor in the country. To go through a personal experience where your wife goes through cancer, yet that has no impact at all on how you view policy, what you fight for, to me that shows a complete lack of humanity. This is why, people do not be fooled by these sorts of stories, whether or not they're true or not. I'm sure his wife does feel this way very passionately about, how he is as a dad. That has no bearing on you as a citizen. These anecdotes mean nothing if there is no greater impact on that politician's perspective and their fight as a public servant. So let me go deeper into Florida and healthcare here and Ron DeSantis and just how terrible this man is. This is just to give you first an overview of how terrible healthcare generally is in America. 100 million people in America are saddled with medical debt. So this is the most common form of debt in the U.S. No other country has this amount of medical debt. They're nowhere near, because other countries have universal healthcare. There is no real mass problem of medical debt. So as NBC News writes here from a 2019 piece, a study from academic researchers found that 66.5% of all bankruptcies were tied to medical issues, either because of high costs for care or time out of work. An estimated 530,000 families turn to bankruptcy each year because of medical issues and bills, the research found. So this is generally a problem, of course, in America. This isn't just, one state. But how does Florida deal with this? Because different states can deal with this in different ways through how they treat, for example, Medicaid. Well, this just happened recently under Ron DeSantis from Health News Florida here. About 250,000 Floridians were kicked off Medicaid. Experts say most were still eligible. So this is the fallout from the end of the federal provision on pandemic coverage for Medicaid. Depending on the state, many were kicked off. And this is a state issue. This part of it is not a federal issue. If you are in a blue state, you are likely fine if you're on Medicaid. But if you're in Florida, not only is Florida bad, it is the absolute worst state in the entire country. So this is from Kaiser Family Foundation. State reported Medicaid disenrollments as of May 2023. Florida by far the most, and as a rate is tied with Arkansas at 54%, meaning people lost coverage in more than half of all cases, Medicaid cases, that were examined. And this is because of Ron DeSantis, a man that went through a personal experience with his wife having cancer, and that has had no impact on him at all in terms of how he views the importance of healthcare. The fact that he went through that experience and still has not changed, to me shows you how dangerous of a politician he actually is. Because a lot of, this is still indefensible, but a lot of politicians, a lot of people generally, they don't understand certain issues until they personally go through an experience where they face that issue themselves. And then they change. For that experience that he had to not have that impact on him in any way, as a politician, as a person, I mean, it doesn't say much for his character. A little more context here from HuffPost. Some states make it relatively easy to enroll and stay on the program. Speaking of Medicaid, others don't. And especially in the states that make it more difficult, tons of people lose their coverage even though they remain eligible, in some cases simply because they couldn't figure out the paperwork. It's a situation that advocates have long decried, and one that even Medicaid critics agreed was problematic in the pandemic when the need to get medical care was so urgent. So a few more things here on this issue from Health News Florida. The Florida Health Justice Project found those who have already lost coverage include families with children who have complex medical issues and are now threatened to pay for procedures out of pocket. Erica Monet-Lee, a public health expert at the Florida Policy Institute, has found that many who have lost coverage were unaware they were terminated from Medicaid. So this speaks to the Ron DeSantis family, a family with children with complex medical issues, in DeSantis' case, his wife, except the difference being for DeSantis, he is incredibly well-connected, wealthy, the governor, so he does not have to worry about healthcare costs. Again, this complete lack of his inability to connect this experience to people who may not be as fortunate as him speaks to how empty the man is. And more in his history here, just quickly. Ron DeSantis has long been an antagonist towards affordable health care. His record is clear. As Florida governor, DeSantis has refused to expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, preventing hundreds of thousands of Floridians from receiving free comprehensive care and leaving the state with one of the highest rates of uninsured residents in the country. When he served in Congress, DeSantis tried to repeal the ACA 6 times and even opposed Trump's Hallmark replacement because it didn't go far enough to slash coverage for millions of Americans with pre-existing conditions. He has tried to slash Medicaid, which seniors, communities of color, and people with disabilities count on, and even campaigned on a far-right plan to cut and privatize Medicare. Ron DeSantis isn't just a terrible politician in the political sense of being able to, perform well in a campaign and have charisma. DeSantis does not do well there. He's also just a terrible politician from the policy perspective as well. Someone who just simply does not care at all about people, despite the experiences that he has had himself. Last thing to leave you with here, just an idea of what DeSantis would do to healthcare if he were in power nationwide. Healthcare coverage for nearly 30 million people would be repealed. Tens of thousands of older adults' lives would be threatened. People with pre-existing conditions could again be denied coverage or changed or charged higher prices. Health insurance premiums could be 20% higher. 65 million seniors who rely on Medicare would face significantly higher healthcare costs. And this isn't, look, I'm focusing on DeSantis here because he is, I would say, one of the worst examples. But this is Republicans by and large. Republicans aren't fighting for healthcare for anybody. So it's really just, gradations of it. How bad is your governor in your state when it comes to, at least this example around Medicaid. But Ron DeSantis, an absolutely terrible candidate, and for him to go through an experience like the one he went through and still not be impacted by it really shows just how empty the man is.